Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Choking Hazard Podcast. We've got a great episode planned for you today, and it's probably one of the more important episodes that we've ever done on the show. Today, we're sitting down with Erin and Valery from Submit to Stigma. Submit to Stigma is a nonprofit organization and awareness campaign within the jiu-jitsu community that promotes the education, discussion, and support for mental illness and those who are affected by it. So if you know anybody who might want to have a little bit more education or need some more education for yourself, this is a great episode planned for you today. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're looking for more guests, athletes, coaches, much more discussion, don't forget to like and subscribe. We appreciate your support and we want to keep driving more content towards you guys. Today's episode has been sponsored by Spirit Leaf Waterdown, located at 64 Hamilton Street North in Waterdown, Ontario. If you're looking for Canada's top cannabis brand, look no further than Alex and his crew at Spirit Leaf Waterdown. If you're looking for CBD, THC, all sorts of different products, they're going to be able to help you out with the widest range in Canada as far as selection goes. Just remember to like them on Instagram and us on Instagram, and you're going to save money every time you shop there. Thanks everybody for watching. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon on the mats. Have a good one. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Back to the Choking Hazard Podcast. We have a great guest here today. Today we have Valery and wow. See, I already told you you're gonna fuck this up. It's already it's totally left up, right? So, anyways, we have Erin and Valery from Submit to Stigma. We're truly honored to have them as guests today on the show because we want to talk about a lot of important topics, but we're also going to have a good time in our conversation today. So, girls, thank you very much for joining the show today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're very excited.
Awesome. So we've been trying to get this podcast together for a little bit. It's been obviously everybody's been all over the place, whether we've been training, shut down and lockdown. So everybody's kind of scattered, but finally we're able to get this together today to kind of talk about a bunch of different things. So let's first how has training just in general been going for everybody? Because I mean, everybody who had lockdowns, you are living in LA, so you have a little bit different situation. How have things been going, both of you guys?
For me, whenever I'm in LA, I pretty much just train kickboxing. So I train at Dynamics MMA. So I mostly just do kickboxing, and we do have jiu-jitsu at the gym and whatnot. We were closed. We had another location that it was just outside, but that was more along the lines of 2020. And then by last year, we had kind of been able to open up a little more. So it's been okay. And I know with Niagara, whenever I go train there, I train at Passador, BJJ, and it's been both in LA and in Niagara because I can't handle it anymore.
Yeah, I hear you with having that routine that you're used to. And then when that gets fucked up, it's kind of hard to keep up with it. I have been really spotty with my training since with the lockdowns and then just training in between them and then things getting busy. So there's just been a lot going on, and I am looking forward to getting back in some sort of structured routine where I can train as often as I'd like to.
Yeah, it's especially the last 2 years, it's been really difficult to do that. But just, speaking of jiu-jitsu, just kind of getting a background with both of you. So, Erin, Val, how did you both end up getting into Brazilian jiu-jitsu originally? What's kind of your origin stories?
Sorry.
Go no, you go, Val.
You go ahead. No, you go ahead.
So you hang up first. Mine starts with other martial arts. When my brothers were young, they did karate, and I wanted to do everything that my brothers did. But then after getting a black belt in that, I feel like that puts me in a good position to say that I don't think karate is the best option, if I'm being polite. I wanted something more full contact, more realistic, and more applicable, I felt. So I just tried it out and I fell in love with it.
Yeah, for me, I didn't have brothers, but my dad definitely treated me like I was a son. And I always kind of roughhoused with the guys and whatnot. And I did no sports whatsoever, but I was really into hardcore music. So I used to go to hardcore shows, and I used to be on this online forum. And I won't say which one, just in case people know what it is. And I met a guy that was coming out to the 2008 Pans, which used to be in Carson, which is not too far from me, probably less than an hour. And so he's like, oh, do you want to hang out while I'm there? And I said, yeah, sure. So he's like, I really want to see how my teammates are doing. Can we drive down there? And I said, yeah, sure. Like, let's go see your bro match thing. And it ended up being really awesome. I saw some female matches. And from then on, like, I think it was a year later that I stepped into a gym just because of like social anxiety. And like, I had like really bad acne and I wore a lot of makeup and I didn't want it to rub off on people. And I just had like every excuse imaginable until one day I just got the balls to walk in. And then ever since, that was 2009. So ever since then, I just sort of was like, this is my thing now, and I'm sticking with it.
Nice. Like, have you girls seen like obviously the dramatic shift where like obviously from even like training from like 2009 where like the females divisions maybe might have like one or two competitors in there, but now slowly, surely, bit by bit, you've been slowly getting a lot more competitive, a lot more individuals involved in the sport. Have you girls been seeing that, especially throughout whether different places you've been training out of?
Well, I'm in a hot spot. So I was really, really, really spoiled. I found a gym that was near me and it happened to be Homolaba Halls, who is a legend. And then, you know, I go to Cobrinha, who's also a legend. And then I moved to New York and went, and was a legend there with Marcelo Garcia. So I just sort of like sought out the best training once I just happened to walk in on one. But I had no females in my gym, and I remember just trying to train around and trying to find like more girls to roll with. But I think it made me more tough on the long run. There are like when I went to the Pans in 2008, when I first saw it, it was a brown and black belt. So it was mixed, you know, and it's still mixed actually for Abu Dhabi. They still mix brown and black belts. However, I mean, nowadays, you know, IBJJF, all those main tournaments, they have huge numbers for both brown and black belt, purple, blue. They added masters. I think it was like 2013, I want to say that they added masters, maybe 2012. And I think that like, oh, it wouldn't happen. Like the divisions wouldn't fill up. And it's like, okay, build it. And then you'll find out that half the women, the adult, were actually the age of Masters 1, Masters 2. They just didn't have an option. And so then they gave them that option. And there's so many camps. Shamako has Girls and Geese, which is a huge encampment that they do, which is usually a one-day thing. But even so, I just did last weekend in Portland. We had the first No-Gi Summit, all female. I think they've been running it for like 7 years and I was one of the instructors. So it was really awesome. So, I mean, there's still like a lot of firsts happening, but it's definitely like a female area now. There's a huge growing group of women. And it's not because there's women's classes and that they're going to only train with each other. There is obviously a good outlet like for women's classes, but just for women to walk into a gym and feel comfortable. I feel like that's really common now.
Yeah.
Go
sorry,
ahead.
I just wanted to say that I completely agree. When I first competed, my first tournament ever, 6 months into white belt, I was against a black belt because it was just one division for all the women.
I'm sorry.
No, if you see the video, it is so ridiculous. And of course I'm like, okay, pull guard. Okay, okay, grips. I'm gonna pull guard. And then I feel like what happened is I pulled guard with either one grip or one grip that wasn't even that good because she ended up in mount in like 0.7 seconds. And it was atrocious, but I went for it. And that's what you had to do back then. But it's definitely improving hugely. And there's really big names that are great proponents and advocates for women in the sport. And you don't have to deal with being a white belt and then having a black belt be rude to you on top of it about how you lost. So
Wow.
Good times. Yeah, that was a really fun time.
Back in the old open days, what would you say, like, for both of you, just from your perspectives, separate perspectives, like, what do you think needs to be done to, you know, maybe get more females involved in the sport, maybe going into like next year and beyond, just based on, I know it's come a very long way because you were both talking about, and I've even seen tournaments where it's been like Abu Dhabi Pro 10 years ago used to be like purple, brown, black belt females. And now that's slowly changing. Or like, even like the IBJJF was, you know, the world championship was brown and black belt combined. Like, what do you think needs to be done to maybe even take it a step further?
Equal pay. There's obviously women want to compete and they want to feel that it's fair. and they want to feel that they are treated as equals. And so a lot of the times women feel like we're just sort of like cast to the side, like, oh, you're never going to be the main attraction. You're never going to be the reason people watch. My mom was mentioning last night with Meatball Molly, how she had like the best fight of the night. Obviously that's MMA, but it's women bring better fights, in my opinion. I mean, you see Mackenzie Dern versus Michelle Nicolini in the many times that they fought, and it's like two squirrels going at it, but in a good way. And it's like, you see so much action, and there's so much like emotion behind it and passion. And I think that making that on the forefront would be important, but also just, again, like those events that pay, it's going to get women to seek out competition better. Because I know a lot of men, I guess they do it recreationally too, but men who want to be good at competition, they're going to seek out the sponsorships and the opportunity to dedicate their time. And their time needs to be paid for, and it needs to be appreciated and respected. And so I think that women are almost there, but not quite. And so I think just having more equal opportunity, and the IBJJF will probably never do that. And I'm very comfortable saying that. They don't really give a shit. And I think Abu Dhabi might, maybe, but probably not, because the pay is never going to be the same as men, because they don't equate the women's matches as, I guess, as important as men's matches. So I think money talks, and I didn't get into this for money, and a lot of people don't, but you need money to be able to train and dedicate your time to that, to be able to compete at the highest level.
Yeah, no, it's so true, because like, even like, as you were mentioning, like the fights from even from last night, and like fights previously before, you would see female divisions just go at it and put on way more entertaining fights, because, and again, I don't know if it's something where they're trying to prove something more, but especially when you look at like the UFC, for example, where Dana White didn't even want to entertain a women's division, like call it like even 6-7 years ago, where now it's almost one of the, again, you had Amanda Nunes, who was like the top of the division, the GOAT, basically in that division, cleaning up house, and that was, everybody was rooting around her. And then you had obviously Ronda Rousey before, Gino Carano before, and you had all these other athletes. But like you said, money speaks. So like it's almost like women's grappling needs to find that next, and I don't want to say like Gordon Ryan, or that next figure that's going to put that over the edge. I don't know who that is, but maybe that person's not out there yet, but I think eventually it will come down the road.
True.
So it should be interesting. But I actually, especially when we looked at more like, obviously the pandemic, it's always had its effects on everybody. And we talk about mental health as a big issue about this entire thing. And you girls have something called Submit the Stigma. So I really kind of want to talk to you what that program is, and, you know, where did that even come from? Where did it begin? What's kind of the uproot story of that?
I'll start because I created it, but Val has definitely made it what it is today. I suffered a loss. My dad died by suicide in 2015. And so I had always kind of put my life out there on the interwebs, and just being a competitor. I mean, I had a blog ever since I was a white belt. So I always felt that, because I knew that I was sort of, I'm not a pioneer, of course, but I felt like since I was in it for the long haul, and I wanted to push and be more nonconformist and really push for equality, even in the beginning, I knew that my efforts at putting my own experiences out there were going to get women to be involved in that. So women were going to see and go, oh, cool. Like, so it's not just these like butch athletic girls. Like, I was in Girl Scouts for 15 years. I did nothing else, nothing physical, nothing, like I never worked out, anything. So when I found jiu-jitsu, I was very non-athletic. And so that was my viewpoint. And then I definitely struggled with my own mental health. I didn't get diagnosed until I had started training jiu-jitsu. So I grew up with undiagnosed ADHD, which I suffered, a lot from that. And just being misunderstood and not even, understanding myself, and generalized anxiety disorder, depression. And so high school was really fun for me. I didn't have a place. I didn't have a group. I had nothing. Like I had maybe hardcore shows. And again, that's a very male dominated area. So it was just like, I'd go in the mosh pit and like scream my lungs out just like everyone else, but it was not kind either. And so jiu-jitsu kind of gave me that empowerment. It gave me that leverage, literally, right, to use my body in a way that I didn't think I could, and to be training with men on top of that, and to like be choking men and dominating them. It felt really good. And just to go out there and compete and be a force just in general in life. So that kind of transferred over to me finding help for myself, because you can't lie on the mats. Whatever you are is going to come out, right? So all of my anxiety came out, all of my ADHD came out, all my depressive thoughts, suicidal ideations, those types of things. Like I definitely battled those. And when you're fighting, and especially when you put the pressure on yourself to compete, that was really huge too. Because if I lost, it was like I was all or nothing. So putting all my eggs in one basket was really, really difficult if I lost, because I'm like, this is all that I do. I gave my best and it wasn't good enough. So a lot of things came to the surface. So when my dad died in 2015, I ended up later that year, I put a sign on the podium. I brought up a sign that said hashtag submit the stigma of mental illness. And I don't even remember how it came up. I just like submit the stigma. It just made sense because my dad would not get help because of the stigma. A lot of people don't get help because of the stigma. Women don't do jujitsu because of the stigma, right? And how they have to be masculine, right? Their femininity is questioned. So all of these things sort of just combined. And I was working for Gracie Mag at the time. And so it was really important for me that, being already like a reporter, a voice, all of those things to make it heard. And so I had a lot of outlets due to my connections, and I was able to put forth this campaign. And then I ended up making it a 503c nonprofit in the US, which you guys are probably like, what is that in Canada? But it's full nonprofit, and I'll let Val kind of take it from here, because I really started it and I found people to support me, but it's Val that really made it what it is now with her expertise and experience.
Thanks. I just really appreciate that we've been able to work together on it, and I'm glad that you're happy with where it's going. I essentially, the way I like to start this story is that I ran into a teammate that I had from when I used to live in Montreal at a tournament, and I hadn't seen her in a long time, and we started talking, and she asked me, "How are you?" And fuck it, I decided to be honest. I said, "I'm not good. Things are just not good. I'm not doing well." And we talked about that for a little bit. I shared some of my mental health challenges with her, and she goes, "Hey, I know this girl. She holds signs."
I know what. Hold on. I know what can help you. Signs. The signs.
I was like, all right. So, okay. And then she elaborated and she told me about Erin and the sign that she would hold up on the podium, and was like, "You got to talk to this girl." So I sent her an email. Pretty sure just the first one even had my whole life story. If you can,
yes.
Yeah.
It was a novel.
It really was. And then we started exchanging emails back and forth, and we just kind of clicked. And then not too long after, I started being more like officially, I guess, involved, right? I really wanted to help. I wanted to be part of it in any way. And then I got the opportunity when it was Nogi Pants to go to the Submit the Stigma seminar at Marcelo's. That was the following day, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's when Erin and I met in person for the first time. Actually, we met at Nogi Pants the day prior. She ran up to me, said, "Hey, I missed you," gave me a hug, like, "Nice to meet you," and ran off and like, "I'll see you tomorrow." And I was like, was that tornado that just attacked me? That was Erin Hurley, I guess. And then I got to meet her the next day. And yeah, just from there, I started helping more and more. One day I was like, "Yo, can I make an Instagram account?" And Erin's like, "Yeah, I probably wouldn't keep up with it, so go for it, like, do your thing." And that became a place for our community that we're building around this mission of hashtag Submit the Stigma, a place for them to be really honest and vulnerable about what they've gone through. And if you see the comments, it's fucking amazing. Like, people are so supportive of each other, people from, different belt levels, different countries, different academies, whatever. I post somebody's story to feature. We do a feature every Monday. So I'll post it, and then all these people are like, "Wow, that's so brave. I feel less alone. Thanks so much for sharing." Like, it's super dope. And that account, I think, just sort of made it more of like a place where people can find community a little bit, because before that happened super awesomely in the seminars, but they weren't happening all the time. So that really got people together. And then from there, it just grew and we collaborated more and more and got like deeper into this. And, you know, we're really good friends, and it's helped us work on the friendship too. Because it's like, you got to assess what your needs are as a, well, not a business, but a charity. And then when your needs are as a friend, and figure all that shit out when you have to be like, yo, you said you'd do this by yesterday. Like, what the fuck? And just
that sounds like me and Erin on like daily. Hey fucker, did you fucking do this already? You fucking fuck.
With love.
So me and Erin have very similar experiences. We should share. I should screen cap some of the text messages to you guys where it's just me and Erin just going off on each other like every other day.
Yeah, it's not easy. So we figured all that shit out too, and just going strong and trying to make big moves together. And I'm super excited. I think we're on the right track here.
Yeah.
In all seriousness though, do you think like jiu-jitsu kind of attract, like you were talking about like community, and like you're using like, you know, jiu-jitsu, people say there's a jiu-jitsu community, but like, do you think it like that community is kind of attracting, you know, like maybe some of the people that have a lot of these mental health issues, or do you think it's more, you know, mental health issues are kind of getting attracted to jiu-jitsu? Does that make any sense? Like, is it like, you know, like the chicken and the egg thing, like you're using jiu-jitsu to kind of remedy and like use it as like therapy? Or
I think that that's pretty apt. It's there, it definitely is a connection. And in terms of the self-defense aspect of the sport, a lot of women who get to the point in their healing that they can do that will want to learn to defend themselves if they've been assaulted. So that will bring people with that idea in mind. This is a skill that I'll acquire. And then anybody who has, you know, or most people who have a mental health challenge or disorder or illness, or, you know, whatever way you want to say a diagnosis, they are going to be told to be active and see people and be social and do all those things that we have no fucking energy for when we're depressed, but that's part of what will help us kind of get better. So then, you know, hey, let's pick an activity. Jiu-jitsu has been gaining more prominence, and that martial art aspect of it definitely attracts people as well, I think. So you end up with people who are on the mats to work out their stuff, and then they start realizing that it will help them work out their stuff, but it also bring up stuff that needs to be worked out.
Yeah, just I think that people who live with mental illness, whether they've been diagnosed or not, are resilient people. And I think that resilient people seek out challenge, and jiu-jitsu is a constant challenge. It's not just like 3 moves that you can perfect. It's not just like, I'm a black belt and I'm still learning so much. Like, people are like, hey, do you play crab ride? And I'm like, fuck no. I'm like, I like spider guard. They're like, yeah, but like, what about heel hooks? And I'm like, fuck them. I tap early to leg locks. So like there's so many aspects of jiu-jitsu that, in terms of like a lifelong learning, that is huge. And people with mental illness have to constantly learn about themselves. You know, I put myself in different situations, and I may not know that's a trigger, but it is, you know. And it's funny now because I'm like, I used to go to hardcore shows where it was like, there's blasting music and it's so loud, and there's so many gross, sweaty people. And, you know, nowadays I'm like, ew. And I don't like loud noises and things. I mean, obviously it's different when there's consent. I think someone once, I don't know, probably a meme. And it was like, what's the difference between like standing in the shower and like standing in the rain? Why don't people like the rain? It's like consent, because you are planning to be wet in the shower, right? Like, it's completely different.
Don't consent to this rain. I consent to this palm tree that's in the background right now. This is my only form of consent.
LA does not consent to rain ever. This is why we're in a drought. I think we just pray the rain away. But then I definitely think that jiu-jitsu is therapeutic. It is not therapy. And people get that kind of confused. So, you know, therapeutic means you have a social support system. There are goals that you can achieve, big and small. There are challenges to overcome that are measurable, that there is something to constantly seek out. So whenever I teach my seminars, I always obviously teach like the jiu-jitsu portion. And then I always kind of give this speech about Submit the Stigma, about checking up on your training partners, because there's a lot of people who have consistent training partners. And when you see someone, if Val and I train together and I'm usually with her, you know, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday nights, and she's not there and didn't give me a heads up, I'm going to wonder, bitch, where are you? Like, I need my training partner. You know, I don't like going with other people. Like, I like drilling with you. And it can come from different ways. It could be like, hey, fucker, right? Or it could be like, hey, I'm so worried about you. I didn't see you in class. Is everything okay? So it can be so many different levels, but check up on your training partners. And even if it's selfish, even if it's like, I need someone to armbar the shit out of, right? But at the same token, you wouldn't armbar your training partner to the point where their arm's going to like crack in half, right? Because you want them to train another day. You want them to get better so they can make you better, but you also don't want to put them out. And so, you know, you care about people because you don't want to shit on them, and you want them to be there for you, and you want that to be like reciprocated. So there's a lot that goes hand in hand. And I think my original goal for Submit the Stigma was to try to get psychologists and therapists to recommend jiu-jitsu gyms and kind of create this alliance between the professional help and the jiu-jitsu, because like I said, like, it's not therapy, but it's a great way to get into therapy. It's therapeutic. It works hand in hand. And I will always say that professional help is the best option. And you know, your training partners aren't your therapist, and your jiu-jitsu coach is not your daddy. There's a lot of things that happen there, especially with old school thinking of like, this is my master, right? And oh, I have to do this and I have to do that. And because if I want to get good at jiu-jitsu, they said that I've got to hop on one foot and tap my nose, so I'm going to do it. Things like that. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong in jiu-jitsu in terms of the psychological aspect, but they're amazing qualities. So there's a blend, but professional help is always going to be the best option.
Yeah, you made a very good distinction where you talk about therapy and therapeutic being two completely different things.
Mm-hmm.
And especially as you're kind of relating it back to, again, the old school mentality of old professors demanding certain things from students, and obviously running into these other issues. Because we just had Rob from McDojo Life on recently for an episode, and we talked about that whole culty atmosphere that has been created through, and again, not just jiu-jitsu, but other martial arts, where, and it becomes these danger cesspools, basically, right? And so that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
But when did you kind of like realize, or like that idea, like therapy and therapeutic are two completely different things? Was that something that you kind of like had to learn or like explain and go through the trials and error, or?
Oh my God, yes. Okay, let's put it this way. I still am learning to not idolize people. When I started working for Gracie Mag, that was an opportunity to learn that like our idols in jiu-jitsu are not good people. A lot of them, having to interview them, being around them, whatnot. They're great on the mats, but that doesn't make them good people. And I've always tried to make that distinction. Are there great people in jiu-jitsu? Fuck yeah, of course. But a lot of the dudes that have gotten to the top, like, are not great people. And yet we idolize them as both. Like, they're this great human being, and they probably, you know, save children and kittens from fires when they're not training. And that's just not the case. And even in my black belt speech, Cobrinha gave me my black belt, and that was super, it wasn't super fresh, but it was 2 years after my dad died. And I definitely did the daddy thing. I said, you know, like, I don't have a dad. And you kind of took that place, and I've always wanted to make you proud. And that was a mistake. That was definitely a mistake on my behalf, because who gives a fuck what he thinks about me as a human being? I should only be there for the jiu-jitsu, and I can learn lessons from him, right, that I can apply to life. But I needed to keep that separate. And only now have I learned how to do that with my coach, Anthony Hardonk at Dynamics. And he understands that too. And I was very, very influenced by the rankings going through. I always say that when I say, like, when I was a blue belt, or, you know, obviously I was younger, but I say when I grew up, I grew up in jiu-jitsu. I'm a really like late bloomer. I found jiu-jitsu at 19, 20, but I'm still like learning so much. And I used jiu-jitsu to learn about myself because nothing else gave me that opportunity. Like I said, I wasn't in sports. I wasn't in all these other situations that other kids were able to learn about themselves. Like, what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are their flaws? What are they good at? And I just never knew that until I found jiu-jitsu. And one of the first questions I asked Hamala when he was like, oh yeah, you're so flexible. And I'm like, does that mean I'm going to be good at jiu-jitsu? And he's like, I don't know, like if you want to be, like what kind of question is that? And so I'm always looking for validation and things like that. And so yeah, if in the wrong hands, jiu-jitsu can definitely be not good for your mental health, but it is empowering. And the actual jiu-jitsu part, not necessarily the community needs a lot of work, which is why Submit the Stigma exists. It's not just a bunch of bros. It shouldn't be, but I definitely went through a lot, but it was the jiu-jitsu that helped me learn. That was like the catalyst for my therapy. That was the platform, the outlet, all of those ideas of where I could find where I was strong, where I was weak, all of those things. I mean, that works for everybody, but for me, especially not knowing that I had these issues until I was like later in life, like they all kind of just like combined. Jiu-jitsu and mental health.
You mentioned something. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I can see where you're coming from, because I think that jiu-jitsu is kind of what prepared me to be open to therapy and sort of, I'm putting myself in physically vulnerable situations all the time. And then I'm making a close-knit group of friends because I had some great people at that gym. And that's forcing me to be open and vulnerable and have that trust and stuff. Whereas when I was in university, I went to see the free counselor at school, just the once. I lied to her the whole time about how like fucking amazing my life was and my parents were amazing and everything was super good. And she's like, okay, why are you here then? And I never went back because I just couldn't trust her to actually say what I needed to say. And then jiu-jitsu kind of gave me more confidence and opened me up and kind of seeing that I can overcome challenges. I was like, all right, if I can, prevent a guy from breaking my arm, I can probably prevent a therapist from hurting my feelings. Like, so it was just kind of like like you say, like the catalyst, like Erin said, the sort of thing that led up to being in the right place for that therapy to happen.
So you mentioned something very important I want to ask you about and just touch on a little bit more. Like you said, you went to your counselor, you're like, hey, like everything's cool and everything, but like you maybe had something underlying like going on, like maybe from your standpoint, but from your standpoint, but also maybe from other standpoints. Why do you think there's like a big why do you think there's such a big barrier for, a lot of people that maybe it's very difficult for them to talk about a lot of these things? Like what advice would you give to somebody who maybe they have, some underlying like mental health issues? Like, how do you discuss that with people? Like what's kind of like the process there?
Yeah, it's really, there's a lot of reasons that would make somebody closed off and just tell a whole bunch of fucking lies like I did, and just not trust them for so many reasons. I mean, for me, it was that I just wasn't comfortable being vulnerable. Excuse me, vulnerable. It made me feel weak. It made me feel like I just sucked and wasn't good enough to have to express these things. And so a lot of that is stigma that people perpetuate in the way that they speak, in the way that they discuss mental health, in the way that they approach someone who might share something with them about mental health. So that stigma is a huge barrier to people seeking help. And there's a lot, like you asked, a lot that you can do to make that a little bit easier. And I would say take it really slow, go at your own pace, and like just make sure that you're comfortable every step of the way. So if what you need to do is send a quick email to 6 different therapists and from their response start gauging like if the vibe is right for you, then do that. Just do that and then take a break, wait a couple days, see what they say, and then, take the next step or, whatever to get you in that chair talking to them. It's really hard for a lot of people. There's a lot of people in my life who would need therapy but don't believe in it or feel like it makes them weak, it makes them broken, and they just have never sought help. But I had to. It saved my life. I have had 3 suicide attempts, and one of them put me in a coma for about a week. And that was due to just hell. Like Erin was saying, it can be really painful. And it just was hell to live with. And it came from all of this emotion and dysregularity from having borderline personality disorder as well as bipolar disorder. So I experienced highs sometimes. Sure, yeah, that felt fucking awesome. That was super good. But then I would crash, and the depressive part of the cycle has always been much longer for me. So that's what was essentially nearly lethal for me. And seeking that support was not an option. However, I just want to say I know that I'm privileged in saying that, because there's so many people who don't have access to mental health care, who are on wait lists for years if they can even afford it or afford the reduced price. Like, it's so expensive, and a lot of people don't have that privilege. So I'm just really grateful that I'm alive and I can be part of something like Submit the Stigma, to use what I've been through to help others understand and help them feel less alone, as opposed to it just being like a boo-hoo, poor me story of something that happened to me.
Yeah, I definitely want to add to that. Of course, everything that Val says is perfect. But I think that being called crazy is, at first it's like, people joke around and there's joking and you're like, aha, I'm the crazy one, aha, I'm the weird one. But when you don't feel like you're enough, and I think a lot of things stem from that, like when someone says that you're not enough of something, it doesn't even matter what it is. You're not strong enough, you're not smart enough, you're not brave enough, you're not courageous enough, you're just making excuses. You just like talking a lot, you just like hearing the sound of your own voice. There's all these things that people say that they don't realize can add up and hurt. And how am I supposed to believe that some counselor, some therapist, some person who I'm paying to listen to me, a lot of money, especially in the US, most of it's going to be out of pocket, at least 150, 200 bucks an hour. And it's how am I supposed to believe that person gives a shit about me to even care? And so I always found that talking about it, right? Like you end the stigma by normalizing it. How do we normalize it? Well, I talk about my experiences. Val talking about her experiences is huge. Me talking about my experiences is huge. And I've gotten to the point where I don't give a shit if I'm crazy. I'm fucking crazy. I'm fucking crazy. And that's cool, because I get to do really cool shit because of that. I get to teach seminars all around the world because I'm fucking crazy. I've won tournaments and I've won gold at major tournaments at black belt because I'm fucking crazy. If that's what crazy means, then I don't mind. And being weird, and it also comes down to being authentic. And when you don't even know yourself, like, that's the thing. I always believe what other people said about me because I had no idea who I was or what I wanted, or I felt like it changed with my mood. And so it's very hard to say, like, you stand up for yourself and say, no, this is what I like because this is what I like, or this is what I do because this is what I want to do. And it's hard to do that when people are constantly judging. And even if you don't feel judged by other people, if you're like me, who's super critical, I'm going to be really, really critical of myself. The voice in my head is the gnarliest voice I've ever heard in my life. And even though I can control it, and I've learned that, the thoughts are not me. It's, that tape recording that just goes over and over that you're fucking shit. That happens. And especially when you lose at something, you fail at something, which is completely necessary. But when you experience those things, it's very hard not to take it out on yourself. And so counseling and therapy is really, really great. But there are really shit counselors out there. There are really shit therapists out there. And for the US healthcare system, if you don't have any medical healthcare, like, you're fucked. Even with me, I have Medi-Cal, which is basically like the welfare of California's healthcare system. And it's very hard to find someone who's even taking clients. So you have to get a referral from your primary, and it's real easy to get a psychiatrist. And I am so lucky that I know that I take 40 milligrams of fluoxetine every day, that I have 300 milligrams of gabapentin, and I can go to a new doctor and just tell him to write me that prescription. And I don't have to worry about not knowing what works for me. And I'm really grateful that I know that, because if I had to go and switch doctors and find another psychiatrist who I'm probably paying out the ass for through my insurance, they probably don't care too much. So also being your own advocate, That's really hard to do, really, really hard. And like the healthcare system navigating it, my mom has been dealing with some chronic pain issues and we haven't figured out exactly what it is. And she's like, I've called this office. I need to get into this office. They never answer. So I called and they're like, well, we have this, April something. I'm like, no, she's in a lot of pain. She needs to get in there right now. She needs to get in there now. So we have an appointment on Wednesday, So it's like, you need to advocate for yourself, but sometimes that's really hard. So if you're having trouble, go to someone that actually gives a shit about you and is willing to go and call and make appointments for you and advocate for you. And that could be a family member. It could be a friend. It could be a training partner. I mean, there are people who it doesn't take too much. And it's like what they're doing is the work of a saint. And so advocating for yourself, but also having someone else advocate for you if you can't is really huge as well.
I don't know a ton about like the American healthcare system, but I think it's a good question for both of you is what would you like to see? Like, probably opening a massive can of worms here for like, let's say in the Canadian healthcare system, maybe something that's geared more towards, people who are suffering with mental health issues and maybe something in the US that they can do. Like, what are some changes that you would both like to see there, just from your standpoints, like, growing up in the US, growing up in Canada, like something that wasn't really talked about, let's say even like 10 years ago, for example?
Yeah, there's so many things that you could change to the system up here. And that's something that I've done a lot of volunteering in mental health in direct support to the community, but I'd like to get involved a little bit more in like policy change and that kind of shit, because that's where you can affect changes that are going to trickle down and impact everybody and make it moving forward a more well-oiled machine that actually supports and helps people. But I don't know a ton about it to give you specifics. It's something like we need to cut down those wait lists. Like, absolutely, that needs to happen. But how does that happen? More providers, lower cost of providers? Do we need more funding? Like, what's the variables here? And I don't know all of that, but definitely just everything needs to be more accessible. And it's, how do you do that? How much money do you need to do that? Or, that type of thing. I definitely would love to see psychiatrists are covered by OHIP, but I would love to see psychologists be covered by OHIP, because that treatment can save somebody's life from, just being nearly over the edge or being in the darkest place that you can imagine. And that's treatment, just like sewing up a bullet wound that won't stop pissing blood. Like, it's, you're saving someone's life.
I just wanted to add for the US part. I think that when I grew up in the school system, it was like, here's a DARE program. Drugs are bad. And it's like, so
drugs are banned.
we all thought that like we would constantly be offered free drugs. That just wasn't the case.
Where was this program? I would like to go. What's going on? So, where are these free drugs that you speak of?
It was like dare to say no, and it was like a big tiger person in a shirt that says
I remember
dare.
that.
I don't know.
Aaron grew up in the 80s.
No, I was born in the 80s. So that it didn't help. And if you, like, for example, if a kid couldn't sit still, which is still now what people think ADHD is, which is not, and it's definitely not what female ADHD is, because females internalize more than men. It's that kid that just doesn't want to listen. It's that kid that just can't handle authority or never got spanked enough when they were a kid.
Like those comments in the report cards where they're like, if you applied yourself more.
Mm-hmm. So when I got my ADHD diagnosis, by the way, my mom was asked by the private school when I was in preschool. I was in preschool. That's like age 4 or 5. They were like, you got to take her to get tested for ADD. So my mom went to my pediatrician, and the dude was like literally the guy that knew me since I was born. And he said, she's not ADD, she's just smart. So of course I was in the gifted programs and all those things. And then when I went and saw my therapist, when I was 21, 22, he said the exact same fucking thing. I said, do you think that I could have ADD or ADHD? And he's like, yeah, or you could just be smart. And it's like, what the fuck does that mean? Like so I went back to all my report cards, and I don't know how it is even on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, it would be, you had your letter grade, you had your work habits column and you had your behavior column. Okay. And it was either U as an unsatisfactory, an S as satisfactory, or E as excellent. So obviously the best grade would be AEE, right? Mm-hmm. I could have an AEU because it would just be, yeah, she does her work and stuff, but like she fucking talks too much. And so there's there's comments that the teachers could choose. They didn't write in themselves. They just chose like out of a drop down list, and talks too much. So my parents would be like, shut your fucking mouth. And I'm like, well, I would get my stuff done. And then I'm literally like, I just can't sit with my thoughts. Like I have to say my opinions and say my thoughts, or I've got to be like, hey, Chelsea, what's going on over there? You need help? Like I couldn't stop. But if I had known that, if I had known that it wasn't me and I wasn't at fault, that it was just a disorder that, I mean, yeah, it's partly me, but I mean, if I knew that was the case, I could have gotten help earlier, or my parents could have taken me, but they didn't, because they had a bad idea of psychologists and therapists and whatnot. So if schools paid more attention and were a little bit more sympathetic, I guess, to understanding that people come from different backgrounds and people come from like horrible situations, but they're there at school. You don't know their home life. You don't know their personal life. You don't know what illnesses that they have, but just being open to understanding that these kids might have something that was actually genetic, that was, passed down in their lineage of anxiety and all these things. So recognizing that. And it's a good segue, just because we're building a program, Val and I, to make gyms more mental health conscious. So kind of in that respect is making sure that owners and gyms and coaches and teachers of jiu-jitsu are aware of these types of signs that are capable of showing themselves in such a challenging area on the mat, right? You're putting yourself in vulnerable situations. These things are going to come out. And so we've created a program, and Val's written the program to be able to identify things that might be wrong and just the right way to go about it. Like, you're not a therapist, you're not going to change someone but you might be that avenue to say, hey, maybe you should go seek help, or is everything okay? I'm worried about you. Just those standard things that just being a good fucking human being makes you, and seeing that jiu-jitsu is such a crazy environment for like sparring and all those things, and so many things could go wrong. If you could just recognize the signs, I mean, imagine how much help you could be.
And I think that so much of it can just all kind of tether back to the stigma, and how combating it is, talking about it is the biggest thing that you could literally save a life by just talking about it. And so that's what we need people to do within the jiu-jitsu bubble, whether that's the gym or the tournament or whatever. We need people to be able to do that in that environment, so that they can actually ask for the help when they need it. And people are there who know how to support them in an empathetic way, and aren't just going to be like, well, rub some dirt in it, like get back out there, do another fucking round. Why are you resting? And understanding why everybody is, like Erin is saying, is coming at it with something different in their baggage. And you have to be able to respect that. So talking about it is just kind of the foundation of like all the other shit that keeps this combating stigma going. And you just have to be honest, just brutally honest. And Erin is so good for that. And that's part of what she's known for with a lot of people who just love to follow her and learn from her. And you just got to be fucking honest, and not worry about making people uncomfortable if you're saying the truth, and not worry about people being shocked or awkward or not knowing how to respond. They'll fucking learn. Like, there's this guy that I trained with, I won't name names, but I didn't know him that well when we were training that one night, and he grabbed a sleeve grip, and my sleeve went up my arm, and he saw the just plethora of scars on my forearms, and he looks at me and he goes, "Why'd you try to kill yourself or something?" And I was like, motherfucker, I didn't need this tonight. So I'm like, yeah, like, what about it? Do you have a question because you want to understand better? Do you want me to talk about it because you want to support me? Or are you just going to fucking gawk and you think it's like you're like morbidly curious and making fun of it at the same time, you know? So the more we talk about it, the less there would be incidents like that. Because if that's the type of training partner I knew I had, would I ever fucking go to that guy if I'm like, yo, I'm really not feeling good, I think I need to see a psychiatrist? No fucking way. That's not the guy I would talk to.
Yeah, no, you girls have laid out some like important and very heavy things today. So I think like what's like my question really is like how do you, what's the next step? Like what's the main, like how do you build your goals for like getting it into every gym to have these conversations? So like, is it getting more programming out there? Is it running more seminars? Is it just teaching more people about their techniques and programs that you have and getting it out there? Like what's kind of the next steps moving forward?
I think it's blending. I can't say like, this is a mental health seminar, come to it. They're going to be like, oh, but if I say this is a jiu-jitsu seminar with Caio Teja and Hamala Bahal and Clark Gracie, and there happens to also be some mental health in there, people are like, fuck yeah, sign me up. And these are, that did happen. That was the first seminar. Also Abraham Marte, Gianni Grippo, and Christina Barlam. So it was this huge lineup, and people came because they wanted to learn from them. And I also had a representative from the National Alliance on Mental Illness kind of speak about mental illness and why they were there and why they existed. And so I just think that it's making it cool because unfortunately in a lot of things in the jiu-jitsu community, the things that get popular are the douchebags and the machismo and the assholes and the people who flaunt and all those things that are the opposite of what good mental health is, or what we could say is mental wellness. Those people are the ones that need to go to fucking therapy. I won't name names, but I imagine you actually thought about some people in your head when I said that. And so we are the opposite of those people. And so I did it through my own personal like journey of, hey, I did this despite being like peeing my pants because I'm so fucking anxious and nervous before I competed. I, accomplished this despite having lack of focus and, having depressive episodes because I wasn't training as much as I thought I should. And so by living my truth, I've been able to sort of get in through people's heads and being like, okay, so even though I have this condition, it's not a limitation. And so that works for people who have diagnoses, but for people who don't, I mean, everyone has competitive anxiety. Like one of the biggest things is like, how do I compete at my best without feeling like I'm going to have a panic attack? Because there's so much pressure. There's so much like, and at first it's not that bad because you think, all right, well, what if my teammates disown me? And it's kind of easy to see if they don't, you lose. And they're like, dude, yeah, that was awesome. You'll get out there, because yeah, you have supportive people in your gym, but then you get up to like blue belt and you're like, okay, well, maybe I should win because I'm like a seasoned blue belt. Then you get to purple belt. And it's like, I should know my shit by now. Then brown belt, now get to black belt. And there's no like, can we do the beginner black belt division? No, you just get thrown to the wolves. And if you've been consistently high level at each belt level, and then you jump in a black belt, they're expecting you to do well. You expect yourself to do well. Your training partners, your coaches expect you to do well. But if you shit the bed because you're nervous, you're fucked. Like you're never going to live up to your potential. And I've had to face that a lot as a jiu-jitsu black belt and just as a competitor in general. And so a lot of people feel those things. And so I think that it's important because people knowing that I can still accomplish things despite, that's everything. So what we've been wanting to do is getting more of those bigger names to come out and tell their story, just as we've had these, quote unquote, nobodies, which is what I used to call people who didn't compete because I was a snob. I think that getting those stories out and showing people that like you can be vulnerable and you can be super tough and super badass and super strong at the same time, that vulnerability is strength. That authenticity is strength. You don't have to put on a persona. You don't have to take pictures in front of cars that aren't yours and like pay attention to how many followers you have, those types of things. So infiltrating that group of people who look up to those assholes and kind of being like, look, that's not really the way. This is the way of being a good person and being good at jiu-jitsu, because maybe you haven't seen that before, but it exists,
I think that's one person that I've noticed recently was, I think, Andrew Wilch. If you follow him from like Daisy Fresh, he's been doing like the car rants, which I think are tremendous, but he was talking about like his own like struggles with like mental health. He's saying like he's bipolar. He's got all sorts of things that have been like diagnosed with him. Is that somebody like maybe in the next step, like reaching out to more athletes that maybe have these issues and getting them to talk about it more freely?
I reached out to him actually. And I think I came at it of like, almost like I'm some random person and can you like write your life story for me? I didn't really like get to know him. He was actually supposed to come out to LA to train at one of their affiliates out here like this week, but he had to cancel. So I was going to sort of just like creep up and like get to know him that way. But yeah, he's definitely the person that I had thought of. Also like Gary Tonin, who doesn't have the greatest reputation because he likes them titties and stuff. But he has spoken about his ADHD and how training has helped him, and won championship, made a video on that. And so he's obviously willing to speak about that. And whether you agree or not, ADHD is a mental health disorder. And so people don't like to think of it as that because they're like, no, like we're all a little ADHD, you know? And it's more of like a socially okay, socially acceptable, I guess, disorder to have. Like that's easier for people to stomach. But there's a lot of people out there that I could definitely reach out to. But again, especially if they have an existing persona, like it tends to be a little bit hard. And I don't want someone to speak out just because I asked them to either, because obviously that wouldn't really be too authentic. But the Musumeci's Tammy has written wonderful things about her depression and anxiety as well years ago for Gracie Mag. So, I mean, there are people out there. I just need to find them.
No, like what you mentioned, like is all about them being authentic and bringing the real them rather than this fake show of, okay, I'm just going to do this because of X, right? And I think that's important too. And it's finding the right individuals to create, like, push that message for you more than anything, because this is the thing that you've been talking about for so long. And again, is you want the right individuals, you want authenticity, you want honesty, you want all the things that are heavy with those individuals and what they're going to bring, because that's what the impact's going to be.
Exactly.
I think that you can also pull that out of someone, because I'm sure there's a ton of people out there that if we were to be the platform that helps them learn the words and the language to talk about what's going on with them, or just to be like, oh, hey, that shit that I feel when XYZ happens, that's a mental health concern. Like, I didn't know that. And having the language and the education to know that that's a thing that exists. It's not your fault. It happens to other people. In some cases, there's names for it when you get a diagnosis. And it's not that you're a broken, horrible person and you got to, fucking try harder. It's just that something is literally going on with you. And sometimes we don't have the words to express that. So providing them with that education in a way that shows, even if you have to show like the benefits of being more mental health conscious and leaving behind that sort of macho persona, if if that feels like the move that's going to get them more followers or whatever, like I don't fucking care why you do it. Eventually, if you do it enough, you'll start realizing that that's, like Erin is saying, that's how you're a good person, and it'll like grow on you. So some people just need to be educated a little bit.
So kind of like as we kind of move on, like what's the next step coming up, like in the next little bit? Like, do we have like a seminar planned? Is there like a training program that people can obviously reach out to and see how they can get that into their club? Like, what are some resources that anybody who's listening right now, they can go, okay, hey, I'm interested in this, I want to put this in my club, or I want to have the training to understand how this is. What can they do next?
I would say definitely start by subscribing on our website to get the newsletters as we continue to roll out, programs. And if there are events that will be happening, that's all going to be on there. I think we definitely are both excited to have in-person events back and try to get a few of those set up. We also have an ambassador program. So the ambassadors that we've accepted onto our team, part of what their responsibility is doing one event per year. So there's going to be those coming up now that we've set up that program. And just keeping in touch. People can reach out. There's Erin at submitthestigma.org and Valery at submitthestigma.org, and the Instagram and the Facebook. And, there's just a lot of ways to get in touch with us. And we're always happy to, you're not going to get an automated reply. Like, we're always happy to chat and let you know what's up and what might be a good fit for you and get you whatever information you need.
Yeah. I mean, even my personal account, on my Instagram, like, people have reached out to me. Now that I'm teaching seminars again, I can, like I said, like, I always end my seminars with sort of like a, hey, look at your training partners and really connect with them, or just look out for them, because that's the easiest way to implement it. Like, those small, tiny steps, things that people are technically already doing, but not realizing that that's actually mental health related. And just getting the idea that mental wellness is equal to physical wellness. And I know there's a lot of guys that don't go to the doctor because they're like, I don't want to be told that I have to take time off the mats because I'm not going to do it anyways. And so that is also a barrier too, like getting your competitors to actually go to like urgent care or to go to the doctor to be like, yo, like, you should probably get that checked out because you might need surgery. They're like, no, I'll just wait till it rips and like just compete without an ACL. Like, those are things that people do. And so imagine being like, hey, you're sad, you should probably talk to someone. They're like, fuck off. So there's a lot of barriers that we have already within the community, but there's a lot of people that are coming through because we've sort of raised our hand and been like, who here has been victimized by their own mental health? And people are like, me. And then they're like, oh, well, I'm a psychologist, or I'm a social worker, or I do this, or I do that. And it's like, hell yeah, we could use your support. So, Val and I are not, like, we're both right now, she's starting her grad school. I'm in grad school, sports psychology for social work for her, right? Clinical social work.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be mental health professionals in one way or another, and we will continue to do the work that we're already doing, but adding that all of that knowledge from other people who have already been in that clinical world, and then blending the two is really key. So I think that we have so much to do, and we're kind of like, holy shit, but at the same time, there's a lot that's been done. So we have to remind ourselves that. And the program, like I said, with, teaching people to be more mental health conscious is going to be important. And, with my networking that I've had, and like, I used to work for Flow Grappling, Gracie Mag, I'm sure that I can sort of get it into those areas of like, hey, if you need something, definitely check it out, because Flow Grappling might release something about Daisy Fresh. And then at the end, Andrew's going to be like, oh, by the way, I've actually looked into my own mental health. And they're like, oh, he's cool, he did that, I can do that too. Just things like that. Or even just ads. Like, I would love to put ads out, and just normalizing it, right? So instead of just seeing like BJJ Fanatics new DVD, like, why not BJJ Fanatics submit the stigma, So just sort of getting it to that equal level of like coolness is sort of my goal, whereas Val is more like of the principles of actual clinical mental health and bringing that education out, right? So I like to entertain more than educate, and Val's more like educate more than entertain, and the two of us work really well together because of that. So we're looking forward to just seeing how people react to the initial. We already have people interested, so then getting some testimonials off of that, and then word of mouth. So I think that it'll really explode, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm really stoked for the program to be 100% done so we can start rolling it out. People should definitely keep in touch for that. It's gonna be super cool.
No, absolutely. And again, like, if there's anything that obviously us on the podcast can obviously push towards, please let us know, because we definitely want to help educate as much as we can. Again, like we talked about it's a huge issue. It's heavy. Like, you guys shared some really good stories with us, and we do appreciate that. And we want to make sure that we're doing our part as well as a broadcast to make sure we're getting that out to people.
And also, Erin wants to teach his spazzing toe hold seminar tour coming soon. Submit the stigma.
I love that.
I don't think Erin has any mental health issues from me knowing him. He's just a dick. He's just a dick.
Buried deep down.
Every time I just get like a little bit of something on him, he just dives on my foot just because he's a dick.
Nice. I like that. That's how you win. And winning is all that matters.
See, she gets it. See, Erin's think alike. That's what it is.
Exactly.
I think Erin, it would be an honor for me and you to set back jiu-jitsu 20 years by me and you teaching a seminar together.
Yeah, it was just set it back. It's like we thought it was going to be a really good one, but nope.
We're like, we're just
we
not
had like
gonna
100
one.
people for the seminar, and where did everybody go?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, Erin, Valery, I want to thank you very much for jumping on the show today. It's been an awesome conversation. We really do appreciate it. Before we take off, is there any final thoughts or things you guys want to shout out to our audience before we leave?
Yeah,
Sponsors,
Instagram. Submitthestigma.org is our website. You can sign up for the newsletter there. You can see the stories on the Instagram, Submit the Stigma. And if you want to just look up everything, Submit the Stigma, hashtag Submit the Stigma. That's why it is the way it is. I mean, I've registered it that way. There is a hashtag in there. It is meant to be shared. It is meant to be talked about. It is meant to be a connection for a lot of people. We have patches for sale, which reminds me, I have to update the website. And so we have patches for sale. We've always had, and I want to be making, rash guards. We have some gis through Kaio Kimonos there's still some left. So we did a
socks. Let's get a hands up for who would wear Submit the Stigma socks. Right?
Socks. I want socks and fans.
I know you do. You do.
So if anyone has like a good jump on manufacturing socks, I want to know, because I'm big on
fucking socks for like weeks now, months.
I mean,
I usually get message from some guy in Pakistan at least like once a week.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they can probably help you out in some fashion.
Well, if you recommend him, Mike, if you recommend him as well.
Hello, friend. Do you? I am maker of gi stuff, and you pay me now.
You know what?
I will definitely pay him if he gives me socks.
We actually do have a guy, because we talked to the guy who owns Epic Rolls, and he has a apparel company. So why don't we put you in touch with him? So
thank you. That would be amazing.
He's based in the US anyway, so it might be a better spot for you.
Does he like socks?
He does now.
The thing about it is everyone needs socks.
Yeah.
And everyone, it's like, if you were like, I don't want to spend too much money, I want to stay within a smaller price point, socks.
Yeah.
I don't know what to get someone for a present. Socks.
Actually, it's kind of genius.
Socks.
It's legit.
Socks.
Erin, you should try that with your wife. Hey, I should get her something. Socks. That's what I'm gonna do. Socks. This is a great anniversary gift.
I'll tell you what, Mike. You try it first. Let me know how it goes.
You first, Erin.
Awesome, ladies. It's been an awesome time. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll definitely be in touch, and we'll definitely push something out, whatever you guys got coming down the line.
Thank you so much.
This is really cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for coming on.